It was arranged, Bonnie, but I am not sure
Oh,
why.
Then I see something at the top of my screen saying that it's been enabled,
Yeah,
but I don't see the captioner here.
right. That is what I am checking on.
Great, thank you. This is Bonnie. Hi, Katie and Denise. Adrian is just checking on the cart reporter.
Someone wants to watch a movie. I'm going to put us on mute so you don't hear that complaining.
Do we have a number to try calling?
That's what I'm gonna do next.
Okay, great.
It's like we're losing everybody.
This is Bonnie. I imagine, people don't like just sitting quietly being watched.
You're just missing out on shenanigans over here, I promise you.
I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me eat my ramen soup.
This is Bonnie. I really don't, because I ran out of ramen and I'm desperately craving soup. But
Oh
at
my
least I have
gosh.
tea.
Yeah, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do the soup. I was craving it for like the last week.
Yeah. This is Bonnie. Unrelated to any official business that hopefully we can get a transcript of because it's been requested. Brian, I saw you walking on Cedar Street this afternoon, very like animated, having a conversation, or I assume you were having a conversation on the phone.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I was in the middle. I was knee deep in a conversation on the phone. I'm actually surprised I didn't notice you, but maybe I shouldn't be so surprised.
This is I was driving.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah.
You did not need to notice my van.
No worries. The other day I was riding down the bike path and I saw you and I was like, oh, I should stop and say hi, but then I would be late.
Yes. All right, Adrian, update.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that time. I just spoke with our contact over there, and he thinks that the primary person who has always done this is maybe having some trouble connecting. So he has her, he's communicating with her right now. And if he can't get her, he has a backup, but it will probably, I think, be a few minutes.
Okay.
So I'm sorry about that. He is also very sorry. He sends his apologies.
Thank you so much. Then why don't we dive in to do introductions first? And my plan was to have the commissioners and the prospective commissioners introduce themselves, and then have you introduce yourself. And if we get to the point of your introduction and we don't have them, we'll think about what to do then, because a transcript has been requested by one of our commissioners who is not here this evening.
Of course.
So I'm just going to call people so that we don't have to worry about who's gone. So why don't we start with Brian and then Katie?
So I'm Brian Polstwaite.
Just one moment. Colin is also trying to get into the meeting.
Here we go.
Great,
All right.
thank you. I'll give him an update on what we're doing and then have Brian dive in. Hi, Colin. Thanks for joining us. Just an update. We are waiting on the cart provider to arrive. So we're going to do introductions before they arrive and then hopefully be able to get a transcript going. So I will call on people. Brian is about to introduce himself.
Great. I'm going to keep my video off and probably mostly stay muted because I'm in the airport in Dallas.
It looks like our captioner is here. So
Then Brian, just pause for another 2 minutes until they're set up.
Hi, this is Nancy. Can you assign me to type captions? I'm sorry, I must have had the wrong link. I was
no problem, Nancy. I am working on that right now.
But this is
okay.
Oh,
One second. Why isn't it letting me? You should be all set, Nancy.
this is Bonnie. Oh, it looks like the captions are still the automated Zoom captions.
Okay. Is that better, Bonnie?
It says that they're turned on. Yes, thank you. All right, great. Brian.
All right. I am Brian Polstwaite. I am the department head for the engineering division for the city of Somerville. I am also the administration's designated member on the commission. And lastly, I function as the secretary for the commission.
Thank you. Katie?
Yes, I am Katie Melton and I am a commissioner. My day job is I am an attorney and I currently work at Metro Housing Boston in the Director of Civil Rights and Fair Housing there. Yeah, I started there in September. I think. So yeah, that's what I do.
Thanks, Katie. So let's do Leon and then Colin.
I'm Leon. I'm a commissioner. I don't have any other special titles. Hi.
Colin, are you okay unmuting yourself to give everybody?
Yep. Hi, yes, I'm Colin. I'm a commissioner, have been since 2013. Also executive director at Disability Policy Consortium.
Thanks. And then Jennifer and Henry.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Civitella Hilario. I've been a prospective member since February, and I'm an attorney in private practice.
Hi, I'm Henry Hardy. I've lived in Somerville for 13 years. I am a candidate for the commission. Prior to retiring for health reasons, I was a systems administrator at Tufts.
Thank you. And we've met. And I know you are very familiar with Denise as well. So Adrian, if you want to tell us whatever you want to share about yourself, and thank you. We're excited to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, sorry for the delay with captioning. We'll call it first time, whatever, but that's okay. We have it down. As Bonnie said, my name is Adrienne Pomeroy. I am the new, about a month in now, ADA coordinator for the city of Somerville. I am also a resident of Somerville, as well have been, it will be, I want to say 2 years next April. So I'm excited to serve a city like Somerville that I have called home for the short amount of time, but I have lived in Boston before and it's become one of my favorite places. With that said, I bring to this role a passion and a background and an expertise in disability policy. I hold a master's of public policy from Simmons University, where I focused a lot of my research on policy for students, school-age students, but then that turned into a passion for serving people as a whole. My most recent role was operations coordinator for Massachusetts Advocates Standing Strong, which is a statewide disability advocacy organization. And I did a lot of things there. I supported our statewide coordinator, our board, the board of directors, who all identify as having an intellectual or developmental disability. And then I did a lot of behind the scenes and also had my policy hat on to help with some of the legislative efforts. I'm really excited to serve in this capacity and not only bring policy expertise, but also my logistics support, not only to support you all with your work as a commission, but to be a great liaison between you all, other residents who identify, and city council and city staff. So I'm really looking forward to this first meeting with you all. As Bonnie said, I have already met with her one-on-one. I am happy to have a similar listening session with each of you if that's something you would like. We can definitely set that up. And I look forward to listening tonight and learning more about you. And of course, you now have my email from my early communication, so always feel free to reach out. My virtual door, so to speak, is open. So thank you so much.
This is Bonnie. Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm excited again to have you here. So moving on, I'm going to do my report. The big update I have is that related to outdoor dining, there's been continued involvement with City Council and the City Solicitor's Office. City Council has multiple times directed licensing, economic development, and ISD to work with the commission to draft new outdoor dining rules, and thus far they have not. My understanding is they have reached out to Adrian, which I think is a wonderful step, but not actually what was directed or involving the commission and people with disabilities and the lived experience. So hopefully we will get brought into that. The draft is supposed to come out in January. Clearly they're not here this evening, so we will see what happens there. The city solicitor's office is working with IT to try and get email communication that was again directed to be given to me regarding outdoor dining. It has been 2 months of back and forth and IT not being clear on how to run an email search. The latest I have is that on Monday, on Thursday, they spoke with one of our city councilors, JT Scott, and said that they would have it run by yesterday. It has not been, but hopefully later this week, there will be emails related to that. Those are my big updates. In the meeting with Adrian and Denise, I requested updates to see if we knew anything on when our prospective members would be scheduled. So I'm not sure which one of you wanted to give a director's report. I don't know what the communication has been between the two of you on that. So
I can update you on that.
great, thank you.
The potential commission members are in the queue. We're just waiting for them to have a meeting. And I don't know when that's going to happen. But they've been in the queue since the recommendation was sent my way. So it's just a matter of the city councilors coming together for a meeting.
This is Bonnie, thank you. So we expect them to be on the next confirmation of appointments hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
That should be the case. I will make sure, I'm sorry, this is Denise. I will make sure to nudge our legislative liaison, intergovernmental affairs liaison to make sure that they know. I mean, they should know, but just an extra precaution.
This is Bonnie, thank you. I know that City Council just had their final meeting of the year, so nothing will happen on this calendar year, which is good information to have. And I don't know what the schedule is for when the City Council president assigns members to committees. If that doesn't happen early in January, I would expect that this will get pushed to probably at least February. So great, thank you. And was there anything else to report? I know there were some outstanding things about term limits and how we can approach the bylaw revision.
I'm sorry, this is Denise. I was supposed to check everyone's term limits. Is that what you're asking about?
This is Bonnie, yes.
Okay. This is Denise. As far as the bylaws are concerned, let me have a conversation with Adrian, and then she can update everyone via email in regards to that.
This is Bonnie, great, thank you.
This is Colin. If I'm just to offer some context, the particular concern here is that I have been on the commission for longer than the bylaws say that I ought to have been. I'm happy to remain on, but that would take some kind of revision.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Colin, for context. I mean, it's a general thing as well. I think, this ties into record keeping and, having sorry, I'm gonna have to sneeze in a second. So if I go silent, that's why. You know, having a record of when everybody was added so that we know when each term ends. Like I'm not sure exactly how long I have been chair, and I know that that can only be 2 consecutive years as well. So, and annual meeting to do, I'm blanking on the word, elections, is supposed to be in June, which obviously we didn't have it in June, and June is quite far away. So the goal here is to get an established, this is when each person was added, and this is when the term is supposed to end, and how do we handle people being added at different times, and when do we do an annual meeting? So just kind of broader record keeping and determining that, not just your position, but definitely you are the person who has been on the longest, and we know that one is out of scope. So, but great, it sounds like we can address that at the next meeting, and possibly get some information in email before then. Does anyone else, do any of the other commissioners have things to report before we move on to old business? Amazing. Brian, no updates?
This is Colin, just a quick preview of coming attractions, but there are going to be early next year some statewide initiatives rolling out regarding expanding access to DME repair, and I will pass information about that on to the commission.
This is Bonnie. I'm particularly excited to see what comes of that, given I was part of the process of working on it, and I am currently going through trying to get a wheelchair, and despite months of working with state level folks, it's not any better a process than the last time around. So hopefully the repair process will be greatly improved.
Bonnie, this is Brian. Can you repeat what Colin said? I had trouble understanding what he was explaining was coming up next year.
This is Bonnie, sure. He's talking about, so he said DME, which is durable medical equipment, and specifically DPC and BCIL ran a campaign to improve the process for wheelchair repairs. And so he said that there will be some state level legislation on that. And, you know, Mass Health was worked with on part of this process as well. And hopefully it should make getting wheelchair repairs a lot easier. It's currently a very onerous process. And Colin in the chat is asking about the background noise and if it'd be better to communicate via chat. I'm fine either way. I didn't have a problem parsing it, but do other folks have a preference?
This is Brian. I'll just ask for a repeat if I need it for minutes. And a lot of it was just because I didn't understand the abbreviations.
This is Bonnie. Great. I can try and chime in too if there's another thing like that. I don't suspect there will be, but happy to be a translator there. So,
Bonnie, I can give a really brief update on the outdoor seating policy. And I'll reiterate what came up on at the License Commission meeting the other evening. But we are working through the policy internally and making sure that all the department heads are all agree with the big picture, because there's more than just the disability function of it. And so they're making sure that all that's in good place. I really was expecting to have something this month. I'm not confident it will be done this month. But as soon as I have the green light to share it with you, as well as the license commissioner, I will be doing so. And it may come, I don't know if it'll come through me or through somebody else, but we'll get it into your hands as soon as possible, and we'll be able to share it to the commission in addition at, potentially right away, but maybe at a later date. We're going to see how, I don't know what the next couple weeks are going to entail, but I wanted to be as transparent as I could about my contribution to it.
This is Bonnie. I appreciate that update. Thank you. And I will reiterate what I said and what Councillor Scott said and what Councillor White said at the licenses and permits meeting, which, if folks aren't paying close attention, that is separate from the licensing commission meetings. Licenses and permits is a subcommittee of the city council. And that was that. And, I'll preface with, I appreciate that there is more than the accessibility component to this, but I believe, and I think the rest of the commission believes, that we should be brought in prior to having a plan that is presented to us. I think that we should be part of drafting what that looks like. The built environment is hugely important, and in every step of this process, we have tried to assist, and even when we have given input, it has not been followed, even if the city in its own plan says that it is supposed to be followed. And further than that, the inspections that are happening are not compliant. There is a lack of understanding of what true compliance means. And the program was already supposed to be done for the year, and we still have many places that have built up parklets, tables in the roadway, or they have fences around parking spaces and they've moved the tables, but it's unclear whether they're bringing them out on nice days or not. So the whole thing, I think, needs a different approach in terms of the accessibility component. And from an accessibility standpoint, as a wheelchair user, I think we need to get away from anything that can be moved. And I think we need to be looking at actual true builds, or using locations that have curb cuts, and how to direct people. And that's kind of higher level than here is a plan to comment on. And I think would require a lot of revision if we're not brought into the layout. But
I can share one other piece on that in particular. The current seating licenses, outdoor seating, public way seating licenses that all exist, they all expire on December 31st. So though some may have opted to take their seating out before then, nobody was required to remove their seating until the end of the calendar year. And all of the licensees that are actively using that seating in the public way have all been notified that they need to be removed by the end of the calendar year.
this is Bonnie. Thank you. I don't believe that the variance for ramps went until the end of the calendar year. I would need to double check that, but it was a temporary variance, and I don't, because we were told that outdoor dining was ending in the fall, I don't believe the variance extends to the end of the year.
Okay, I'm not
I would need to
positive
double
about that.
check that, and I don't have the ability to quickly pull it up now. But good to know, December 31st. All right, so old business, we have on the agenda potential use of parking violation funds and priority setting. If I could be given access to share my screen, I can. This was sent out and posted on the city website, thankfully, but I could put up the accessibility priorities if that would make it helpful for people to follow along. I also don't need to if everybody, I see a thumbs up from Katie, so. Or Adrian, you have it as well if you want to share. Like, I don't need to be the driver of it, but whatever's easiest.
I think you can share now, Bonnie. It might be
Okay,
easier for
Let
you.
me check. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Um, this is so if people want you and so have folks had a chance to review and think about priority setting?
This is Leon. Yes, but it was a while ago, so I've probably forgotten by now.
Okay, this is Bonnie. I guess I will dive in then. One thing I have heard a lot in other public meetings is accessibility in terms of providing documents ahead of time for city meetings and presentations, because what's happening is, people show up to a meeting and they're trying to follow a presentation, a PowerPoint that all of the information is not always shared about. The city is using outside resources. The meeting I attended last night used something called Jamboard, which doesn't have a lot of accessibility. It gets incredibly low ratings, but all of them function fairly similarly, where you are using sticky notes to share thoughts, and it's very visual, and it's on a separate screen, so you can't follow captioning if it exists, which in many city meetings it does not exist. And there is the chat that is open. So there's many streams of information, and it's incredible.
Bonnie, this is Brian. You stalled out on us, so we didn't
Yeah.
hear.
Oh, I think she's back.
This is funny. Sorry. Where did I stall out?
It was right after you mentioned Jamboard and sticky notes.
Correct.
So, I was saying that all of these programs kind of function the same, where you're using a visual format to aid commentary while listening to a presentation, while trying to look at a PowerPoint, while trying to pay attention to the slide. And I have heard from many residents that that's incredibly difficult to follow. And from an accessibility standpoint, we know that people who are relying on a screen reader cannot process a PowerPoint slide that's being shared on a Zoom, and not having it available ahead of time means that they cannot access in the same way that other members of the public can. So I'm curious what other people's thoughts are on trying to get slides, meeting materials like this document up on the city website ahead of meetings. And also, if somebody is presenting to this commission or another commission or city council, having those documents available ahead of time.
This is Leon. I completely agree that having the information in as many forms as possible ahead of when it's going to be discussed is helpful for all of the reasons you said, and also just if someone needs more time to process and formulate a response, then yeah, the 3 seconds you have before the topic moves on in the presentation itself, that having it ahead of time is helpful for that.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Brian. Most of your presentation just now was based on an online sharing situation, which I suspect we will hopefully someday eventually go back to in-person public meetings too. So I think my guess is that the concerns that you're raising here with respect to online, there are analogs to in-person presentations, such as PowerPoint presentations, boards up on the wall, breakout sessions that are similar in scope. And I think if we're going to incorporate the one, we should incorporate both into that conversation.
I'm not sure when we will go back to in-person meetings, but sure, there might be a future where it is the bulk of what we're doing. So I would like to find where this is on here. And
This is Brian. Bonnie, are you working in an editor, or is this just a PDF?
this is just the PDF. Thank you. I pulled up the one from the city website. So I will incorporate this after with your meeting notes.
Okay.
Great.
But yeah, however you want to do it, I would like to make sure we're getting an edited copy of this to include in the minutes.
This is Bonnie. I think if you can take the minute notes and we will edit it after the fact. And I'm seeing, I was working off of multiple documents, trying to incorporate other, and I think that it might have gotten left off of this one, even though it is one of the things that I'm prioritizing highly. So I think you add it to the meeting notes.
Okay.
Edit it after. And I see Colin's hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, two thoughts. I think this is a great list. Of the ones on here, I think review and report on progress towards the transition plan would be my highest priority. Just because having been really involved in that process, I think it's really critical to see how much that was actually acted upon, how much has actually changed, how far we have left to go. Under the second category, which I think is a critical one, I'd like to, in addition to the zoning changes section, or really as part of that, the percent requirement for universal design is really important. And I would say also, I would add to that aligning the city's inclusionary zoning and the state's accessibility standards to maximize accessible units. And also on a more macro level, I think I would like to see a plan from the city about how to increase the accessibility of housing, the Somerville housing stock, like that as an explicit priority that's being attacked from multiple angles. I think that needs to be a priority, and we need to be involved in that process.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Colin. Brian, did you catch?
Working on it. Okay.
So one thing I also did not give in my chair's report, but I should, because the macro level I had not done, but the piece of aligning inclusionary units and accessibility standards in terms of the housing. I was also involved on a mayor's advisory committee over the past couple of weeks, and many of these are issues that I brought up there, including those. I've also been in contact with multiple of our newly elected city councilors, and those were also things that I brought up. And I'm excited. One of the newly elected city councilors said, you know, why are we thinking about a small percentage of universal design? We should start high and work back if the developers give us pushback. And I personally love that approach and would happily endorse it. So yeah, on board with that. Colin, is your hand still raised because it's hard to lower or because you had more commentary? I assume because it's great. Did anybody else have things off of this? Should I scroll? Jennifer.
I thought it was an incredible list, and I think every one of these issues are valuable. I think, though, at least my observation for the past 10 months is I think the commission needs more resources and more commissioners. And I'm not just talking about Henry and me, I'm talking about actually a lot more people involved. So these goals can be delegated to subcommittees, and those subcommittees can really take on some projects, because I think everyone on the committee so far does so much, especially you, Bonnie. But, you know, I think this frustration because there's just not enough hours in the day and people have other things. And so if we could, and maybe this is more of, I don't know, I don't know whose responsibility it is, but kind of really tighten up the recruiting, the interviewing, the onboarding process for prospective commissioners, and then bring more people, you know, who are committed onto it so more people can get things done.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. You know, responsibility is a tricky thing. Commissioners, I mean, I have brought several people into the commission over the past few years, some who have managed to get onto the commission and some who moved out of town during the process. I have, you know, tried boosting it, and the city has sent it out. Fundamentally, this is not just a problem with our commission, but a problem with commissions and committees across the city. It is a big problem with engagement and finding people who have the resources to be able to serve, because you know, it's one thing to be able to dedicate a couple of hours once a month, which not everybody can do on an evening, but it's another to have the capacity to put in the time outside of that, which I think we all agree we really need to accomplish much of these things. So some things that have been proposed are providing childcare, doing different times, which may or may not work as well for a commission such as ours. I'm open to the idea, but obviously some people have day jobs. I don't know if it would work. I don't know if we're even allowed to change the meeting time periodically instead of doing always at the same time, if we can switch that up. But definitely this is a thing that is at the forefront of the elected officials and the folks working on charter review as well, to try and improve. And I want to just jump back for a second, because thinking about subcommittees, so we talk about updating and reporting back on what progress has made in the ADA transition plan. Adrian, I'm sure you've seen it at this point, but I'm not sure you've had time to actually really digest it. And I'm curious how you're feeling about how and when you'd like to approach that, whether you see the commission playing a role in looking at that, or if that's something that is going to be done just on the city level.
Thanks, Bonnie. So I have initially one in preparation for when I was interviewing for this job, I have actually read through the transition plan and sort of that that way they teach us in grad school to read large documents like that, looking at data and pulling important pieces out. I think there's a lot of really great things in there, but I definitely think from where it started and that we're so many years into it, that there is definitely room at some point to reevaluate it. And I think that would start with this group right here, looking at it and reviewing at it and sort of evaluating perhaps what is working, what is in progress, and maybe if any revisions need to be made. As you all know, those of you who maybe have dived or maybe even deep dived, it's 364 pages long. It's quite a dense document. And really as we move forward with that, make it more digestible, not only for this group, but the group that you all represent, and then the city as a whole, because information is power. But yes, definitely open to that. And I think there's some things we can definitely work on there, and I look forward to that conversation.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. And sorry for putting you on the spot.
No problem.
So one thing I wonder is I have done a mid-level dive, and I'm sure Colin's done a deep dive. And I wonder if, in terms of finding out what progress we've made, if we could work together to figure out what city departments to coordinate with to find updated information, because that might be kind of a nice starting point for just seeing where we're at in comparison to where we were. Because right now it's kind of hard to tell, like, if we've made any progress at all. And I know that we have made some. It's just that we've also had things degrade since the plan was put in place. So, Katie?
I have a clarification question, and I apologize if this is something that is well known, or especially now that Adrian is here. It's Adrian, right? That's what I say. Yep. Especially now that Adrian is here and presumably has her own role, like has a job that she does. What is our role? We're obviously not going to look out for like everything that's happening. We're not going to look everything she does. We're not going to try to attach to, like, is our role to focus on special projects? Is our role to like come up with ideas that we want to prioritize to support her? What is the commission's role?
This is Bonnie. So I can tell you from the bylaws, and then Adrian, you should chime in after me. So the commission's role is to advise and support city departments. I mean, and I don't have the bylaws pulled up, and but they should.
How is that different from Bonnie's? I mean, not Bonnie's role. You are Bonnie. From Adrian's role now that she's here.
Yeah, Adrian.
Sure. That's a great question, Katie. And I know that there's been a little bit of a gap, like somebody was in this role and then I want to say summer, late spring, summer, early fall, sort of without a person serving in this role. The first benefit now that I'm here is that, Denise can correct me if I'm wrong, or even Brian, in terms of the city's history, why I'm not the first ADA coordinator, I will be the first individual who is what I like to say laser focused strictly sort of on this ADA component. No, Bonnie is correcting me, so I will stop talking.
No, this is Bonnie. There was somebody previously. I think it's been about a decade.
Okay.
Colin would know the name of the person and exactly when they left, but
okay.
There was an ADA coordinator. We just haven't had one whose sole job was that in quite.
I
some
see.
time,
Okay.
but-
Yeah, this is Colin. It was Betsy Allen initially was just the ADA coordinator. And then I think around 2015, oh goodness, sorry.
I'm the ADA coordinator at my office right now, and let me tell you, I have so many things on my plate that it's like, I mean, that's so it's a big difference is the point I'm trying to make. Not that I'm not doing a good job, but the point is that I'm not laser focused like she's saying. That's not all I'm thinking of.
Right. So what I was saying, and then an alarm went off, was 2 years, I think, into Betsy's term, she was also given responsibility for the Civil Rights Commission and the city's like DEI work broadly. So I think it's been since then that we've not had someone specifically focused just on ADA compliance.
Thank you, Colin. Denise?
So I'll let Adrienne speak more to her role for the city, since she's more intimately connected with it. But basically the role of the commission has always been to research, advise, recommend, coordinate programs designed for the city to meet the issues that the community has and be a sort of a guidance as far as issues around disabilities and needs that need to be met within the city. And so to that end, Adrienne's role within the city is to be the city's expert and move policies and programs, the goals of the commission forward. But I'll let Adrienne go deeper into her role. But basically, if you want to think about the commission's role, it's to research, advise, recommend, and provide programming around issues within the city and for persons with disabilities, around disabilities.
Thank you, Denise. As Denise said, just really summary, I'm here to serve as an expert and also a liaison. So the expert piece comes in particularly when we're talking about other city staff and departments and the city council, whether they're incoming or they've been serving the city for long, is to be the ADA expert, to be able to even troubleshoot accessibility issues, whether that's a public meeting or a smaller committee meeting. And then on bigger, provide education and training for new staff and then department specific. So they actually understand what it means that Somerville 1 has a transition plan and then Title 2 of the ADA and what that actually means for a city of our size, a city of our density, and a city, of course, with all the economic and other development going on. And I sort of joked with Denise when I started, I'm going to be BFF with everybody because I really think ADA covers all departments of the city, with everything we do. I'm a former educator, which some of you know from being part of my interview process. And I believe education is key because some people, even though they may be experts in their field, they don't understand the ADA component and how that ties into their job with the city. And I really hope to help close some of those gaps. And then I am going to be in a really great position to be a great liaison for this commission as we have going on. And then there's also just the logistical support piece for making sure, supporting Bonnie and making sure the meetings are posted in time for the public meeting law on the website. Like we saw earlier in the evening, making sure we have somebody here to caption things of those nature. So I am here as a resource for everybody, and I am here to bridge and hopefully fill in some gaps so we can all work together, for accessibility and for inclusion, as my part with the Racial and Social Justice Department, but the city as a whole. And as you know, that's a huge undertaking. But I think what's really sort of great about what I've already seen a month in is that there are people who are really committed. You have a very active commission, and that's great. That's a great model to go off of. And, so as again, resource, being a liaison, and as Denise said, being an expert for everybody as we move forward.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Adrian and Denise. One other piece that I think wasn't mentioned but is important is like Adrian will also handle if there are specific complaints that come in from constituents.
Yes.
Sir, I laughed a little when you said we have a very active commission, and we do, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword because we are. I have attended some meetings with other area commissioners, and I think that we are engaged on a lot, and part of that is Somerville has a lot going on, and part of that is the people on the commission. I think I put myself up there as being an advocate who's very loud, but it means that we have so many things and not enough resources to do them all, which is challenging. So I look forward to having more support and more resources to be even more active. Colin just put in the chat that he's happy to have Adrian here, and it's great to have somebody doing this full time. Cambridge has 2 full-time staff focused on accessibility. So he hopes this is the beginning and not the end of the city making a real commitment to this. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And, as I said earlier, I was on the Mayor's Advisory Council to kind of guide and make suggestions, some of which I'm sure she'll use and some of which she may not, but a group of residents that she chose directly to sort of lay out what we think short and longer term priority goals should be. So that to me says that she is also dedicated to making accessibility a priority. So I'm hopeful that with a new administration and a dedicated ADA coordinator, we'll be able to get a lot accomplished and really change how accessibility has been approached from the city. So, awesome. Do we want to dive back to the document? We've got a bit on here about OML clarity, subcommittees, the document library. Henry, that's something that you've talked a bit about. Do you want to chime in with anything on where you see that fitting priority level?
Honestly, I haven't given it any further thought, but I can say that just now I went looking at our document library in order to find the bylaws, in order to familiarize myself, and I didn't find them. They may be there, but there's some documents there. It would be good if there were more. My other thought, which is somewhat of a tangent here, is that we're charged with matters regarding the ADA, but that's not the only law or regulation protecting and enabling the disabled. The Fair Housing Act, for instance, it has some provisions regarding disability. So who at the city is responsible for things which impinge on the rights and abilities of the disabled, which are not the ADA, but which are the Fair Housing Act, Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Civil Rights Act, and other state laws that I can't list specifically.
This is Denise. It depends. That's a complicated answer. So when it comes to hate speech, bias incidences, discrimination, it falls under the RSJ department as of right now to investigate. If we're talking about housing discrimination based on disability, it's a two-folder because it would fall under Adrian and it would fall under the Housing and Stability Department to work together to figure out that piece of it. So it really does depend, Henry. It depends on where they file a complaint, where the complaint began, and then does it fall under more than one category of a human rights or civil rights violation? Because then that would mean that it probably would take multiple departments to take a hold of it and investigate, and then move forward with that process. So it all depends.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. So this is one that I have personal experience with coming up with some lack of awareness and lack of ability to assist from both inclusionary housing and the Office of Housing Stability. And I think that this might warrant a conversation, and I know Henry has a lot of personal interest in this as well. So maybe we can set up a conversation with you, Adrian, to kind of talk about some of the things that we've met up against, so that when you work with them on education, there's kind of a broader understanding on your end of the specifics. Because we've talked about like needing an overlap of accessibility and affordability, but there's a lot that just kind of gets missed, and there's a lot for people with disabilities in terms of housing that I think they want to be helpful, but don't understand the nuances and the reality. And what's viewed as a fair housing violation is narrower than it perhaps should be. So that one in particular, I'd love to privately dive into more, and then come back to the commission with thoughts on whether this is something that's, you know, solely an education piece or a documentation piece for the public, for who to go to. I think that's certainly part of it. Or if it's bringing city council in to write ordinances. I'm not sure how many things, but I see Henry's hand back up.
Thank you. This is Henry. And this dovetails both my personal experience and my more general thoughts. You know, having moved from a white collar job at Tufts to Section 8 housing and Social Security disability, what has been really remarkable to me is that, you know, if you're a major corporation and your interests are jeopardized, they send in the Marines. If you're a middle-class person and your rights are jeopardized, there will be a criminal and civil action by the state, by the city. But if you're a poor person, you have rights, and it's completely up to you to enforce them. And if you go to the city and say, help me enforce these rights that I have under state or federal law, that's a really hard road to hoe. And I've been told things like, the city has a policy against filing complaints. Very creative and evidence-free, but that was the reason I was given for not pursuing a particular disabled housing issue regarding an accommodation.
Thank you, Henry.
So that's the background of my question of, if it's not ADA, but it is a disabled issue, where does that fall in the city hierarchy? And the answer didn't seem like there was a bright and clear definition there, and I would like there to be, because when there's this diffuse responsibility and no accountability, things don't happen.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. I think it's clear that we need to get this documented and more clear. Denise, I see your hand, but Leon had their hand raised for quite a while. So Leon, was this something that you wanted to say that was relevant to this? Do you want us to come back? Like, please let me know.
It's not on this specific issue, so if Denise has something to respond to this, then she should go first.
Okay, and then you immediately after. Thank you.
This is Denise. Unfortunately, when we're dealing with things that are legal, there is no direct answer. Because it all depends on what is the complaint that's being filed, what is the particular circumstances of the violation. So there's no direct way. There's only where does the complaint begin and what happens after the complaint is received, how is it processed? And how it's processed depends on the particular circumstances of the complaint. So there is no direct response as far as saying it goes directly to the RSJ department and that's where it lands, because I would be lying if I was to say that. It depends on the particular circumstances of the event that's being complained about or being reported. And that's fair to do due diligence and make sure that we are addressing every individual's needs and violations accordingly.
This is Bonnie. Thank you, Denise. I think not having had a specific ADA coordinator focused on this, like for myself, made it difficult when trying to work with those offices to not have any backup. So I think what we might have power to do is work out what a process is for when things should be passed in that direction, or when people should be informed this might be a resource for you to use, and just kind of document more that this exists now as a resource and a backup. But I get that it's going to be complicated. Leon?
Yeah, so this is Leon. So going back to sort of a larger overall priority setting, I think there's sort of two sides of the priority setting that we need to be thinking about. And one is what are the things that we want to change in the city? And the second is what do we need to do to have the capacity and the power to actually affect that change. And some of that will be increasing the capacity of the commission itself, either by getting more commissioners or by figuring out how are we able to actually have functional subcommittees. And part of it will, I think a bigger part of it has to be how do we get more people on the city who are, actually paid and working full time and have the time to spend on things to be putting that time to our priorities. Because I think the amount that we want to be changing in the city isn't something that can be done just on a volunteer basis. I think that a lot of it is going to be our role is going to have to be getting more people in the city, actually on staff, to be working for the things that we are telling them to work towards. So I think that's going to have to be a big part of things. And I'm not entirely certain where the best way to start on that is, but I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as we figure out what are our priorities.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. You sound like a broken record. I think a lot's going to come down to the incoming administration.
Yeah, this is Leanne, and I'm really hopeful that actually having an ADA coordinator now will be a big part of that. I don't want to put too much on Adrian right when she first comes in, but I'm really hopeful that she'll be able to, sway more people in the city to work for us instead of against us. So fingers crossed.
This is Bonnie. I would go so far as to say work with us, or I would say that that's a great starting point. I mean, I would love for the city to be working for us, but I think with us is the major goal.
Yeah,
It's
I work with us, but I want them to keep doing that work even when we're not, they're specifically watching over them.
This is Bonnie. Yes, that is a fair point.
This is Brian. If I may follow on what Leanne was saying, only because I really like the concept of how to increase the commission's power. I think that word is important. Because it couples in a lot of different things, like it couples in respect, it couples in agency, it couples in authority. It couples in a lot of other things that are maybe less appropriate, but I do think it is worth the commission spending time to figure out how to convince, and I know that I'm speaking out of, I got two heads going on here because I'm on one hand a member and also on another hand part of the administration, but trying to think of it as a member, how does the commission influence city? How does the commission, with the agency that it has and the tools that it has, influence what the city does, and understanding all the different levers it can pull to accomplish those goals? And part of that is, at least from my perspective and history on other more advocacy oriented organizations in the city, a lot of that centers around having a clear and defined goals, focusing on one after the other, and not try to go do too much at once, try to accomplish a goal and then move on to the next. And another is making sure that you have the numbers and the voice to speak to the city in all its different iterations, whether it's the administration, whether it's staff, whether it's council, whether it's other commissions and committees, and having the quantity of voice to bear to specific goals that you have, or we have. I can be. So that is particularly challenging. I'm split between these two worlds, so there's only so much I can do on that front. But I do believe that is an important way to think of it, as thinking of it, as Leanne said, as power.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. I have a few different directions to go with that. I appreciate the idea of picking one thing and doing it and then moving on. But the city of Somerville is going through immense transformation right now on every front. And we all know that if something is built, it is much harder to change it. It is a complaint-driven process. It is incumbent on the person with the issue who is systematically oppressed to have the time and the capacity and, frankly, the resources, because it often takes a lawsuit to get anything changed. So if we're not looking at all of that as it's happening, we are signing ourselves up for 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 more years of inaccessibility. So I don't think we have the luxury of trying to focus on one thing at a time. I just don't. And in terms of the number of voices, like, I attended the meeting last night on the public safety building, and there were 100 residents almost universally talking about not seeing police as the answer to public safety. And I don't know that the city is going to change their views. And a lot of these issues, like we've been talking about for years, we can talk about the sidewalks where a decade ago, the former chair of the commission filed public records requests and went on a whole campaign about how the sidewalks were built inaccessibly. And the entire commission ended up resigning over it. And if we pull that list of sidewalks, I can guarantee that the majority of them have not changed. So I don't think it's a lack of voices and numbers. I think it comes back to what is the city prioritizing and are there any consequences? And I apologize, Brian, but I'm going to use you as an example. This commission worked with you to draft an outdoor dining policy. We worked with you to get a variance. We were told these things would be followed, and then we had months of excuses for why they couldn't be followed. And then at a licenses and permits committee, you testified that you reviewed every plan and you approved some that you knew were not in compliance and could not be in compliance. So that's the point where that's what I want to fix on an administrative level. We haven't been unclear. Our voices haven't wavered. We have had tremendous community support on things that need to happen. But what do we do? How do we change that? Because I see you on this commission and I truly believe you care. And personally, I like you, but then I see you in that city role and it makes my blood boil that a member of this commission can sit there and say, yep, worked with the commission to come up with these plans and we just approved things that we knew couldn't be in compliance because we care about the businesses. That's saying that we're prioritizing a business over the civil rights of people with disabilities. And what is falling apart at the city level to make that happen, and how can we change that? Like, because without changing that, I don't see where we fix things.
This is Leon. I'll just add that I both agree and don't agree with what Brian said. I think that there is some truth to the fact that there is so much that we want to accomplish. And if we try to focus on all of it at once, things are just going to get dropped and none of it will happen. But I think that there is enough that we can't just, and things will take long enough to accomplish that we can't just try to do one at a time. I think that it's going to be, picking the handful to focus on at once. There won't be as many things as we want to get done, but it can't just be one at a time because these things are going to take years to happen. We can't wait. All of the other issues can't wait on the top priority to happen. We need to be trying to do at least some of them at the same time, if not all of them.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. I am interested if anyone at a city staff level has thoughts on that. Like, I really, truly, like, I don't, it's hard for me because I think that there have been a lot of city staffers over the past year in particular that truly have been trying. And I think it just, there's a disconnect happening somewhere. And I don't know if that's the mayor saying we're not going to fund these things, or if it's economic development is given outsized power and saying we can't let things be hard for any business. Like, I truly don't understand. And I have hope that a new mayor will make things different. I think I have seen a lot in the 18 years that I've been a Somerville resident that Curtatone has not managed well. And I really hope that shifts, but I don't know where that disconnect lies. And I hear you know, Adrian, you talk about educating people, and I think a lot of people have been educated. And I know that that's important, and I know that sometimes refreshers on that are important and nuance on it is important. But the very basic level is these are laws and they're not being followed, and we kind of have no recourse within the city if it gets to a certain level and it's just, yeah, we have these plans, but we're not going to follow our own plans. Like, I don't have the resources to sue the city, and I don't want to sue the city. And I think it's a bad look that the chair of the commission even has that thought. Like, we should be working together. And I really want to know how to fix it at that level.
Yeah, this is Leanne. I think to add to that, I want to live in a world where everybody honestly cares and is going to, keep the best interests of people with disabilities in mind and actually prioritize working towards accessibility. Like, that is the ideal. But I don't think we live in that world, and I don't think that we are going to get to that overnight. And I don't want accessibility to have to wait until we hit that point. I want there to be a process before then of making sure the accessibility happens, even if not everybody is on board with that. And that means that there have to be consequences, and those consequences have to be actually followed through with. So I don't think that we can leave that part out, even if the goal is education and getting people honestly on board. I think we do have to work on both.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. Brian hopefully provided a time check. We have 8 more minutes. I see Jennifer and Henry.
I appreciate everyone sharing this, and from a resident's perspective, often I felt that these issues have been perceived as nuisance issues and that they haven't been received by many people within the city as actually civil rights issues. And for that, I'm really disappointed, because I've been a resident of Somerville for a long time. And so when it comes to priority setting for the commission, as well as for the ADA commissioner, maybe, Bonnie, as you mentioned, with the new administration, and it's great to hear that your opinion was solicited in terms of her priority setting, but maybe that's where efforts could be made to see if some influence can be made from the top down. And, whether it's just, people's responses to this commission's feedback is individuals, or maybe it was the old administration, but to see what goodwill, what can be done to influence that agenda. Accessibility is an issue that affects so many of the new mayor's constituents that she positioned for. And that's our big issue here, is our accessibility, to be able to access the resources of Somerville. And, we could probably come up with 2 or 3 main action items underneath that umbrella, and then pitch it to her and speak within our own networks of Somerville residents to kind of really elevate the voice of the commission. So when the new mayor does start picking people, making decisions, this is top of mind. And then, we're not picking one topic, but we're really more focused on how do we build goodwill within the administration so we have a louder voice.
Thank you. Henry?
This is Henry Hardy. To be brief, I strongly endorse the comments of the chairperson, and would like to also express support for the idea that what we need to see is enforcement of laws. We shouldn't have to be negotiating these things. Now, as for political power, to the best of my knowledge, generally, and in Somerville, political power first derives from the ability to deliver votes. Secondly, the ability to deliver money and donations in kind. And third, from the power of the press. Now, The first, we don't really have any enforcement ability. The second, there may be a small amount of money that we derive from enforcement, should it happen. Thirdly, the power of the press, we do have. We can use social media. We can send out press releases. What do we send out press releases about? We hold public events. They're fun, they're educational. I think there's a lot we can do in that area. And if I was tasked with coming up with ideas about the library, I need to focus on that, but I would like to have some other folks to work with me. And I really don't know what we can do with our website or how to do that. Also, I'm not a commission member, but if I were invited to participate with some other folks to come up with some further ideas for public outreach and public resources, I think that's a good place to start. That is all.
Thank you. We have 4 minutes. Brian has asked about the parking violation funds. Henry has alluded to that. I can say that it's theoretically a fund or a bank account now exists, and city council can approve our spending. We've not, or I have not been given any details on who writes checks, how things get approved, what that process is. I don't know if Denise or Adrian have had any communication regarding that. But we as a commission need to kind of decide how we want to use those funds, in addition to figuring out the process and documenting the process for how to spend those funds. Denise or Adrian, do you have any further details?
This is Denise. We are having conversations around the specifics of the statute and what the development of that process and policy looks like, so that we're able to come to the table and have something more concrete to be able to share with the commission. But right now it's in its development stages, because we have to be on one accord with several city departments, including legal and finance. And so we've been meeting on the same.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. Colin's dropped off, and I'm sure he could have given us the exact details, but the statute's pretty clear that the commission directs the funding. I know that there was some back and forth at city council meetings about whether or not the ADA coordinator or the RSJ department or city staff direct the funding. And the statute is incredibly clear about we can be required to need approval for expenditures, but the commission are who directs that. So
this is Denise. That's not the part that we're debating.
Great. I know that there had been some debate on that, so I am glad that
policies that need to be created around the process.
Great.
And so that's the part that we as a city departments have to put together. But you're right, the statute is clear. What's being discussed right now is what the policy and the process and the MOU would look like.
This is Bonnie. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that that part of the debate is settled and it's just policy. So this has been great, and I think it's clear that we need to solicit more commissioners and have more resources and more clarity on what the resources that exist are, which we had talked previously about doing an orientation. And I think that might be one of the things we should kind of push up to see, like, what city resources are there? how do we access them? What are the guidelines in terms of how we accomplish things? But it is 8 p.m. So thank you, everyone. We can actually end on time tonight, which will be a rare occurrence. Does somebody want to? I'm sorry that I never remember. Do we need a motion to end the meeting? Great. Does somebody else want to?
This is Leon. I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. And I and Katie, I think you're the only one, and I see a raised hand. Great. Thank you so much for joining us for the first time, Adrian.
Sure.
And thank
I look
you,
forward to it.
Denise. I know this might be your last time joining us, so thanks so much.
Thank you, Nancy Captioner.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Good night.